Modern technology is cool. We can do this everywhere. Get my settings right. There we go. Well, how are we today? Well, it's what is it, day 15? Golly, we're going to finish up the book of Deuteronomy? I'm in a remote location, somewhere not in quarantine. Actually, I'm at the grocery store. Mama's picking up some stuff for the house. And I'm going to sit out here and read the Bible a little bit. If you remember where we were in Deuteronomy 28, verse 15. This is where we're going to start today. Maybe we'll get finished with Deuteronomy while I'm sitting here. I hope everything's okay with you. God bless you. Good to see you today. Deuteronomy 28:15. However, if you do not obey the Lord your God, do not carefully follow all his commands and decrees that I am giving to you today, all the curses will come on you and overtake you. You will be cursed in the city and cursed in the country. Your basket and your kneading trough will be cursed. The fruit of your womb will be cursed. All the crops of your land and the calves of your herds and the lambs of your flocks. You will be cursed when you come in and cursed when you go out. The Lord will send on you curses, confusion, and rebuke everything you put your hand to until you are destroyed and come to ruin because of the evil that you have done in forsaking him. The Lord will plague you with diseases until he has destroyed you from the land you are entering to possess. The Lord will strike you with wasting disease, with fever and inflammation, with scorching heat and drought, with blight and mildew, which will plague you until you perish. The sky over your head will be bronze, and the ground beneath you iron. The Lord will turn the rain of your country into dust and powder. It will come down from the skies until you are destroyed. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You will come at them from one direction, but flee from them in seven, and you will become a thing of horror to all the kingdoms on the earth. Your carcasses will be food for the birds and the wild animals, and there will be no one to frighten them away. The Lord will afflict you with the boils of Egypt, and with tumors, festering sores of the itch from which you cannot be cured. The Lord will afflict you with madness, blindness, and confusion of mind. At midday you will grope about like a blind person in the dark. You will be unsuccessful in everything you do. Day after day you will be oppressed and robbed, with no one to rescue you. You will be pledging to be married to a woman, but another will take her and rape her. And you will build a house, but you will not live in it. You will plant a vineyard, but you will not even begin to enjoy its fruit. Your ox will be slaughtered before your eyes, but you will eat none of it. Your donkey will be forcibly taken from you and will not be returned. Your sheep will be given to your enemies, and no one will rescue you. Your sons and your daughters will be given to another nation, and you will hear and you will wear out your eyes watching them day after day, powerless to lift a hand. A people that you do not know will eat what your land and labor produced, and you will have nothing but cruel oppression all your days. The sights you see will drive you mad, and the Lord will afflict your knees and legs with painful boils that cannot be cured, spreading from the soles of your feet to the top of your head. Verse 36. The Lord will drive out the king you set over you, to a nation unknown to you or your ancestors. There you will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone. You will become a thing of horror, a byword, and an object of ridicule among all the peoples where the Lord will drive you. You will sow much seed in the field, but you will harvest little, because locusts will devour it. You will plant vineyards and cultivate them, but you will not drink the wine or gather the grapes, because worms will eat them. You will have olive trees throughout your country, but you will not use the oil, because the olives will drop off. You will have sons and daughters, but you will not keep them, because they will go into captivity. Swarms of locusts will take over all your trees and the crops of your land. 43. The foreigners who reside among you will rise above you, higher and higher, but you will sink lower and lower. They will lend to you, but you will not lend to them. They will be the head, and you will be the tail. 45. All these curses will come on you. They will pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed. But because you did not obey the Lord your God and observe the commands and decrees he gave you, they will be a sign and a wonder to you and your descendants forever, because you did not serve the Lord your God joyfully and gladly. I'm going to pause for just a second. Cut that little bit out. Sorry, where was I? 45. All these curses will come on you. They will pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the Lord your God and observe the commands and decrees he gave you. They will be a sign. They will be a sign and a wonder to you, you and your descendants forever, because you did not serve the Lord your God joyfully and gladly in the time of prosperity. Therefore, in hunger and thirst, and in nakedness and dire poverty, will you serve the enemies the Lord sends against you. He will put an iron yoke on your neck until he has destroyed you. 49. The Lord will bring a nation against you from far away, from the ends of the earth, like an eagle swooping down, a nation whose language you will not understand, a fierce-looking nation, without respect for the old or pity for the young. They will devour the young of your livestock and the crops of your land until you are destroyed. They will leave you no grain, new wine, or olive oil, nor any calves of your herds or lambs of your flocks, until you are ruined. They will lay siege to all the cities throughout your land until the high fortified walls in which you trust fall down, and they will besiege all the cities throughout the land the Lord your God is giving you. 53. Because of the suffering of your enemy will inflict on you during siege, you will eat the fruit of the womb, the flesh of the sons and daughters of the Lord your God has given you. Even the most gentle and sensitive man among you will have no compassion on his own brother or the wife he loves, or his surviving children, and he will not give to one of them any of the flesh of his children that he is eating. He will be all he has left. It will be all he has left because of the suffering your enemy will inflict during the siege of all your cities. The most gentle and the most sensitive woman among you, so sensitive and gentle that she would not venture to touch the ground with the sole of her foot, will begrudge the husband she loves and her own son or daughter, after childbirth from her womb, and the children she bears, for in her dire need she intends to eat them secretly, because of the suffering your enemy will inflict on you during the siege of your cities. Verse 58. If you do not carefully follow all the words of this law which are written in this book, and do not revere this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God, the Lord will send fearful plagues on you and your descendants, harsh and prolonged disasters, and severe and lingering illnesses. He will bring on you all the diseases of Egypt that you dreaded, and they will cling to you. The Lord will also bring on you every kind of sickness and disaster not recorded in this book of the law, until you are destroyed. You were as numerous as the stars in the sky. Be left but few in number, because you did not obey the Lord your God. Just as it pleased the Lord to make you prosper and increase in number, so it will please him to ruin and destroy you. You will be uprooted from the land you are entering to possess. 64. Then the Lord will scatter you among all nations, from one end of the earth to the other. You will worship other gods, gods of wood and stone, which neither you nor your ancestors have known. Among those nations you will find no response, no resting place for the sole of your foot. There the Lord will give you an anxious mind, eyes weary with longing, a despairing heart. You will live in constant suspense, filled with dread both day and night, never sure of your life. In the morning you will say, "If it were only evening," and in the evening, "If it were only morning," because of the terror that will fill your hearts and the sights that your eyes will see. The Lord will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. Verse 29, or chapter 29. These are the terms of the covenant the Lord commanded Moses to make with the Israelites in Moab, in addition to the covenant he made with them at Horeb. Moses summoned all the Israelites, and he said to them, "Your eyes have seen all that the Lord did in Egypt to Pharaoh, to all his officials, and to all his land. With your own eyes you saw those great trials, those signs and great wonders. But to this day the Lord has not given you a mind that understands, or eyes that see, or ears that hear. Yet the Lord says, during the 40 years that I led you through the wilderness, your clothes did not wear out, nor did the sandals on your feet. You ate no bread, and drank no wine, or other fermented drink. I did this so that you might know that I am the Lord your God. When you reached this place, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, came out to fight against us. We defeated them. We took their land and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. Verse 9. Carefully follow the terms of this covenant, so that you may prosper in everything you do. All of you are standing today in the presence of the Lord your God, your leaders and your chief men and your elders and officials and all the other men of Israel, together with your children and your wives and the foreigners living in your camps who chop your wood and carry your water. You are standing here in order to enter the covenant with the Lord your God, a covenant the Lord is making with you this day, and sealing with an oath, to confirm you this day as his people, that he may be your God as he promised, and as he swore to your fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am making this covenant with this oath, not only you who are standing here with us today in the presence of the Lord our God, but also with those who are not here today. Verse 16. You yourselves know how we lived in Egypt, and how we passed through the countries on the way here. You saw among them their detestable images and idols of wood and stone and of silver and gold. Make sure there is no man or woman, clan or tribe among you today whose heart turns away from the Lord our God to make and to go and worship the gods of those nations. Make sure there is no root among you that produces such bitter poison. Verse 19. Such a person hears the words of this oath, and they invoke a blessing on themselves, thinking, I will be safe, even though I persist in going my own way. They will bring disaster on the watered land, as well as the dry. The Lord will never be willing to forgive them. His wrath and zeal will burn against them. All the curses written in this book will fall on them, and the Lord will blot out their names from under heaven. The Lord will single them out from all the tribes of Israel for disaster, according to all the curses of the covenant written in this book of the law. 22. Your children who follow you in later generations, and foreigners who come from distant lands will see the calamities that have fallen on the land and the diseases with which the Lord has afflicted. The whole land will be a burning waste of salt and sulfur, nothing planted, nothing sprouted, no vegetation growing on it. It will be like destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in fierce anger. All the nations will ask, why has the Lord done this to the land? Why this fierce burning anger? Verse 25. And this will be the answer, and the answer will be, it is because this people abandoned the covenant of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the covenant he made with them when he brought them out of Egypt. They went off and worshipped other gods and bowed down to them, gods they did not know, gods he had not given them. Therefore the Lord's anger burned against this land, so that he brought on all the curses written in this book. In furious anger and in great wrath, the Lord uprooted them from their land and thrust them into another land, as it is now. Verse 29. The secret things that belong to the Lord are God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children forever. We may follow all the words of this law. Chapter 30. When all the blessings and curses I have set before you come on you, and you take them to heart, whatever the Lord your God disperses among the nations, and when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes, and have compassion on you, and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Even if you have been banished from the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and you will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your ancestors. The Lord your God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your descendants, so that you may love him with all your heart and with all your soul and live. It always keeps going back to Deuteronomy 6:4, the Shema. The Lord, verse 7, the Lord your God will put all these curses on your enemies who hate you and persecute you. You will again obey the Lord and follow all his commands that I'm giving you today. Then the Lord your God will make you most prosperous in all the work of your hands and in the fruit of your womb, the young of your livestock and the crops of your land. The Lord will again delight in you and make you prosperous, just as he delighted in your ancestors. If you obey the Lord your God and keep his commands and decrees that are written in this book of the law, and turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Verse 11. Now now what I'm commanding you today is not too difficult or beyond you to reach. It is not up in heaven so that you have to ask, who will ascend from heaven to get and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? Nor is it beyond the sea so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you may obey it. 15. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase. And the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away, and you are not obedient, if you are drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You will not live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This day I call the heavens and earth as a witness against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. Ooh, there's a good one to remember. And that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My feet are falling asleep. They're hanging out the window. Oh, that's funny. Chapter 31. And Moses went out and spoke these words to all Israel. I am now 120 years old, and I am no longer able to lead you. The Lord has said to me, you shall not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God himself will cross over ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you will take possession of their land. Joshua also will cross over ahead of you, as the Lord said. And the Lord will do to them as what he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, whom he destroyed along with their land. The Lord will deliver them to you, and you must do to them all that I have commanded you. Be strong and be courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Verse 7. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him, in the presence of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you must go with his people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them, and you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you, and he will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Verse 9. So Moses wrote down this law and gave it to the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. Then Moses commanded them, at the end of every 7 years, the year for canceling debts, during the festival of tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God, in the place he will choose, you shall read this law before them in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the foreigners residing in your towns, so they can listen and learn to fear the Lord your God, and follow carefully all the words of this law. The children who do not know this law must hear it and learn to fear the Lord your God, as long as you live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. Verse 14. The Lord said to Moses, now, the day of your death is near. Call Joshua and present yourselves at the tent of meeting, where I will commission him. So Moses and Joshua came and presented themselves at the tent of meeting. Then the Lord appeared at the tent in a pillar of cloud, and the cloud stood over the entrance to the tent, and the Lord said to Moses, "You are going to rest with your ancestors, and these people will soon prostitute themselves to the foreign gods in the land they are entering. They will forsake me and break the covenant I made with them. And in that day I will become angry with them and forsake them. I will hide my face from them, and they will be destroyed. Many disasters and calamities will come on them, and in that day they will ask, Have not these disasters come on us because the Lord our God is not with us? And I will certainly hide my face in that day because of all their wickedness in turning to other gods. Now write down this song and teach it to the Israelites, to have them sing it, so that it may be a witness for me against them. When I have brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, the land I promised with an oath to their ancestors, and when they eat their fill and thrive, they will turn to other gods and worship them, rejecting me and breaking my covenant. And when many disasters and calamities come on them, the song will testify against them, because it will not be forgotten by their descendants. I know that they are disposed to do, even before I bring them into the land. I know what they are disposed to do, even before I bring them into the land I promised them on an oath. So Moses wrote down this song that day and taught it to the Israelites. The Lord gave this command to Joshua, son of Nun: Be strong and courageous, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I promised them on an oath. I myself will be going with you. After Moses finished writing in a book the words of this law from beginning to end, he gave the command to the Levites who carried the ark ark of the covenant of the Lord. Take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and there it will remain as a witness against you. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are. If you have been rebellious against the Lord while I am still alive with you, how much more will you rebel after I die? Assemble before me all the elders of your tribes and your officials, so that I can speak these words in their hearing, and call the heavens and earth to testify against them. For I know that after my death you are sure to become utterly corrupt, and to turn from the way I have commanded you. In days to come, disaster will fall on you, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, and arouse his anger by what your hands have made. Well, I got done at the grocery store, so we're back here at the office. Alrighty. Well, I left you off right at the beginning of the Song of Moses, so it's not quite out of the chapter 31 yet. So we're still on chapter 1, and it's only one more verse left. But it's kind of the introduction to the Song of Moses. There's something I'm going to note when I get to verse 8 there, but 8 and 9 there, so let me read to that point, and then I'll stop again just for a minute. So we're in verse 30. And Moses recited the words of this song from beginning to end in the hearing of the whole assembly of Israel. Listen, you heavens, and I will speak. Hear, you earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain, and my words descend like dew, like the showers on new grass, like abundant rain on tender plants. I will proclaim the name of the Lord. O praise the greatness of our God. He is our rock, his works are perfect, and all his ways are just. A faithful God does no wrong. Upright and just is he. They are corrupt, and not his children. To their shame they are warped and a crooked generation. Verse 6. Is this the way you repay the Lord, you foolish and unwise people? Is he not your Father, your Creator, who made you and who formed you? Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past, as your father when he will ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will explain to you. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, now think about that, that's Babel. When he divided all mankind, he set up the boundaries for the people according to the numbers of the sons of Israel, is what it says right here. But usually, if you look in the bottom of your Bible, if you have footnotes in your Bible, it'll say something like, there'll be like a letter right beside where it says Israel there. Some of them say by the angels of God, and some of them say what the Septuagint said, which was the Greek Bible, Old Testament. It says sons of God, and that makes more sense. We can't know exactly what that means, but and there's some wild ideas that go everywhere, but which is where my mind wants to go too. I mean, if I'm honest, but let's keep reading. For the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted inheritance. In a desert land he found him, in a barren, howling wasteland. So this is a history of everything right here. Deuteronomy 32 is beautiful. He shielded him and cared for him. He guarded him as an apple of his eye, like an eagle that stirs up the nest and hovers over its young, that spreads its wings to catch them and carries them aloft. The Lord led him alone. No foreign god was with him. He made him ride on the heights of the land and fed him with the fruit of the fields. He nourished him with honey from the rock, with oil from the flinty crag, with curds and milk from the herd and flock, and with fattened lambs and goats, and choice rams of Bashan, and the finest kernels of wheat. And you drank the foaming blood of the grape. So that was talking about pretty much the patriarchs, but he was really just calling the three of the patriarchs through their journey in Israel as Jacob. So, and Jacob is Israel. So it's poetry is what it really is. Jeshurun grew fat and kicked and filled with food, and they became heavy and sleek, and they abandoned God, who made them, and rejected the rock of their salvation. They made him jealous with their foreign gods, and angered him with their detestable idols. We're talking about Egypt now. They sacrificed to false gods which are not God, gods they had not known, gods that recently appeared, gods your ancestors did not fear. You deserted the rock who fathered you. You forgot the God who gave you birth. The Lord saw this and rejected them, because he was angered by his sons and daughters. I will hide my face from them, he said, and see that their end will be. See what their end will be. For they are a perverse generation, children who are unfaithful. They made me jealous by what is no God, and angered me with their worthless idols. I will make them envious by those who are not a people. I will make them angry by a nation that has no understanding. For a fire will be kindled by my wrath, one that burns down to the realm of the dead below. It will devour the earth and its harvests, and set afire the foundations of the mountains. I will heap calamities on them, and spew my arrows against them. I will send a wasting famine against them, a consuming pestilence and a deadly plague. I will send against them the fangs of the wild beasts, the venom of vipers that glide in the dust. In the street, the sword will make them childless. In their homes, terror will reign, when young men and young women will perish. The young men and women will perish, and the infants and those with gray hair. And I said I would scatter them and erase them from human memory. But I dreaded the taunt of the enemy, lest the adversary misunderstand and say, "Our God has triumphed. Triumphed. The Lord has done all. The Lord has not done all this." Verse 28. They are nations without sense. There is no discernment in them. If only they were wise and would understand this and discern what their end will be. How could one man chase 1,000, or 2 men put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them, unless the Lord had given them up? For their rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies concede. The vine that comes from the vine of Sodom, their vine comes from the vine of Sodom, and from the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are filled with poison, their clusters with bitterness. Their wine is the venom of serpents, the deadly poison of cobras. I have not kept this in reserve, and have I not kept this in reserve and sealed it in my vaults? It is mine to avenge. Mine to avenge, I will repay. In due time, their foot will slip. Their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. Verse 36. The Lord will vindicate his people and relent concerning his servants. When he sees their strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free, he will say, "Now where are their gods? The rock they took refuge in, the gods who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings. Let them rise up to help you. Let them give you shelter." Verse 39. See now that I myself am he. There is no God besides me. I put to death, and I bring to life. I have wounded, and I will heal, and no one can deliver out of my hand. I lift my hand to heaven and solemnly swear, as surely as I live forever, when I sharpen my flashing sword, and my hand grasps it in judgment, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours flesh, and the blood of the slain and the captives, the heads of the enemy leaders. Verse 43. Rejoice, you nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will take vengeance on his enemies and make atonement for his land and people. Verse 44. Moses came with Joshua, son of Nun, and spoke all these words of this song in the hearing of the people. Then Moses finished reciting all these words to Israel, and he said to them, Take to heart all the words I have solemnly declared to you this day, so that you may command your children to obey carefully all the words of this law, that they are not just idle words for you. They are your life, but to them, by them you will live long in the land that you are crossing into the Jordan to possess. Verse 48. On the same day the Lord told Moses, Go up onto the Abarim range to Mount Nebo in Moab, across from the Jericho, and view Canaan. The land I am giving the Israelites is their own possession. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people. Just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor, he was was gathered to his people. This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites, at the waters of Meribah, Kadesh, in the desert of Zin, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. Therefore, you will see the land only from a distance. You will not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel. Chapter 33. This is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, pronounced on the Israelites before his death. He said, "The Lord came from Sinai and dawned over them from Seir, and he shone forth from Mount Paran. He came with myriads of holy ones from the south, from his mountain slopes. Surely it is you who love the people, all the holy ones who are in your hand. And at your feet they all bow down and receive, and from you receive instruction." The law that Moses gave, the possession of the assembly of Jacob. He was king over Jeshurun when the leaders of the people assembled, along with the tribes of Israel. Let Reuben live and not die, nor his people be few. And this he said about Judah, verse 7. Hear, Lord, the cry of Judah. Bring him to his people, to his hands, his hands he defends his cause. Oh, be his help against his foes. Verse 8. About Levi he said, Your Thummim and Urim belong to your faithful servant. You tested him at Massah, and you contended with him at the waters of Meribah. He said of his father and mother, I have no regard for them. He did not recognize his brothers or acknowledge his own children, but he watched over your word and guarded your covenant. He teaches your precepts to Jacob and your law to Israel. He offers incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Bless all his skills, Lord, and be pleased with the work of his hands. Strike down those who rise against him, his foes, till they rise no more. Verse 12. About Benjamin he said, Let the beloved of the Lord rest secure in him, for he shields him all day long, and the one who loves rests between his shoulders. The one the Lord loves rests between his shoulders. Verse 13, about Joseph he said, May the Lord bless his land with the precious dew from heaven above, and the deep waters that lie below. With the best the sun brings forth, and the finest the moon can yield, with the choicest gifts of the ancient mountains, and the fruitfulness of the everlasting hills. With the best of the gifts of the earth and its fullness, and the favor of him who dwelt in the burning bush. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Verse 17. His majesty is like a firstborn bull. His horns are the horns of a wild ox. With them he will gore the nations, even those at the ends of the earth. Such are the 10,000s of Ephraim. Such are the thousands of Manasseh. In verse 18, about Zebulun he said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out. You and Issachar in your tents. They will summon peoples to the mountain, and there offer the sacrifices of the righteous. They will feast on the abundance of the seas, and on the treasures hidden in the sand. Verse 20. About Gad he said, Blessed is he who enlarges the Gad's domain. Gad lives there like a lion, tearing at arm or head. He chose the best land for himself. The leader's portion was kept for him. When the heads of the people assembled, he carried out the Lord's righteous will and his judgments concerning Israel. Verse 22. About Dan he said, Dan is a lion's cub, springing out of Bashan. About Naphtali he said, Naphtali is abounding with the favor of the Lord, and is full of his blessing. He will inherit the southward lake. About Asher he said, The most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him bathe his feet in oil. The bolts of your gates will be iron and bronze, and your strength will equal your days. There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides across the heavens to help you on the clouds in his majesty. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will drive out your enemies before you, saying, "Destroy them." So Israel will live in safety. Jacob will dwell secure in a land of grain and new wine. There the heavens drop dew. Blessed are you, Israel. Who is like you? And all the people saved by the Lord. He is your shield and helper, your glorious sword. Your enemies will cower before you, and you will tread on their heights. Chapter 34. Sorry, I struggled through that one. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land I promised on an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have to let you see with your own eyes, but you will not cross over to it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord said, and he buried him in Moab, and in the valley opposite Beth Peor. But to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days, until the time of weeping and mourning was over. Now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him, and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Verse 10. Since then no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, from the Lord, whom the Lord knew face to face, and who did all the signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials, and to this whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Alrighty, the Pentateuch is over. That's the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Alright, well, we're beginning a new book now, Joshua. This is the conquest. This is the, all of that, everything we've read so far has been building up for this, the taking of the promised land, and I think they kind of get into like a victory, and then exactly what Moses has been predicting. I mean, after Joshua, they're pretty awesome through Joshua, but they start to rebel, pretty much right when we stop today. It breaks a story here, which I think should be together, especially, but I want you to, when we get to the story of Rahab, see, the stories of Rahab and Achan go together. They go to, because you have the rebellious woman that comes ahead of us, that comes out of from the Canaanite city and helps them. And then you have Achan, and if you don't know his story, man, it's heavy. God had told him not to take anything from the enemies, and he takes something and buries it in his tent. And so you have this poetry that should go together. You have the story of Akan and Rahab, and you have the good evil person, and you have the evil good person. So the Bible is really deep. But let's get started into Joshua. It's a really cool story. I hate to keep telling you that this is one of my favorite books of the Bible, but that's the way I feel every time I get into a new book of the Bible. They're all my favorite. It's the Bible. All right. Well, let's jump in. Number 1, Joshua chapter 1. After the death of Moses, so it's seamless. Right after the death of Moses, servant of the Lord, the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I am about to give them. To the Israelites, I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert of Lebanon and from the great river Euphrates to all the Hittite country and the Mediterranean Sea in the west, and no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you, and I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and be courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land that I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and be very courageous. He keeps repeating that, okay? Be careful to obey the law of my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officials of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now you will cross the Jordan here to go in to take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. 12. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you the Lord your God will give you the rest. Oh, man. Cut that little bit out. Verse 12. But to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the commandment that Moses gave the servant of the Lord after he said, the Lord your God will give you rest by giving you this land. Your wives and your children and your livestock may stay in the land that Moses gave you east of the Jordan, but all your fighting men ready for battle must cross over ahead of your fellow Israelites. You are to help them until the Lord gives them rest, as he has done for you, until they have taken possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. After that you may go back and occupy your own land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you east of the Jordan, towards the sunrise. Verse 16. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. And just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will fully obey you. Now, only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you command them will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. Chapter 2. Then Joshua son of Nun secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim, "Go look over the land," he said, "especially Jericho." So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab: "Bring the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." Verse 4. But the woman had taken the two men in and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I do not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you may catch up to them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax, and she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out on pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Verse 8. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and a great fear has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below." Verse 12. "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and my brothers and sisters and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death." 14. "Our lives for your lives," the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land." So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. And she said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go your way." Now the men had said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless we enter the land. You have tied a scarlet cord in her window through which to let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother and your brothers and all your family into your house, if any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we're doing, we will be released from the oath that you made us swear." Verse 21. "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. Then, when they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days, until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. When the two men started back, they went down out of the hills and forded the river, and came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, the Lord is surely giving the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." Chapter 3. Israel in the early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan River, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord of your God, and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it." Joshua told the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Verse 6. Joshua said to the priests, "Take up the ark of the covenant and pass it on ahead of the people." So they took it up and went on ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan rivers, go and stand in the river." Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites." Verse 11. "See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord, all of the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, each from one tribe, and as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord, the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing upstream will be cut off and standing in a heap." Verse 14. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, and the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan the Jordan is at flood stage during harvest, all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from the upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away, at a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by, until the whole nation had completed crossing the dry ground. Chapter 4. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell all of them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them at the place where you stay tonight." Verse 4. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had promised from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and he said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord. Go to your Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone and on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of Israel, to serve as a sign among you in the future when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." Verse 8. So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord told Joshua, and they carried with them over to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the ark of the covenant had stood, and there they are to this day. Verse 10. Now the priest who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people. Just as Moses had directed Joshua, the people hurried over And as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side of the camp while the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, the half-tribe of Manasseh, crossed the river ready for battle in front of the Israelites as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. Verse 14. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they had stood in awe of Moses. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the ark of the covenant law to come up out of the Jordan." So Joshua commanded the priests, "Come up out of the Jordan." Verse 18. And the priests came up out of the river, carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord. No sooner than they had set their feet on the dry ground than the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and ran at flood stage as before. Verse 19. On the 10th day of the first month, the people went from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal in the desert on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan, and he said to the Israelites, "In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' 22. Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over the Jordan. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God." Chapter 5. Now when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until they had crossed over, their hearts melted in fear, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. Verse 2. At that time the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." So the Lord had So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibead, Haraloth. Now, this is why he did so. All those men who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the wilderness on their way after Egypt, and all the people that came out had been circumcised. But all the people born in the wilderness during the journey from Egypt had not. The Israelites had moved about in the wilderness 40 years, until all the men who were of military age when they left Egypt died. Since they had not obeyed the Lord, for the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land that they had solemnly promised their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained there where they were camped until they were healed. Verse 9. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." So the place has been called Gilgal to this day. Verse 10. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal in the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. The day after Passover, that day they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread, and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after. So they ate this food from the land. There was no more manna. No longer any manna for the Israelites, but they had heard but the year they ate the manna, the produce. But the year they ate, but that year they ate the produce of Canaan. Blah, tongue tie. Here's a cool story. Verse 13. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" Verse 14. "Neither," he replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord I have now come." And then Joshua fell face down on the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Chapter 6. Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. They were in quarantine. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with the all-armed men, and do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark, and 7 on the 7th day march around the city 7 times with the priests and blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, and have the whole army give a large shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go up, everyone straight in." Verse 6. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and have the 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it." And he ordered the army, "Advance! March around the city with an armed guard, going ahead of the ark of the Lord." Verse 8. When Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets before the Lord went forward, blowing their trumpets, and the ark of the covenant followed them. And the armed guard marched ahead of the priests, who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard followed the ark. All this time the trumpets were sounding, but Joshua had commanded the army, "Do not give a war cry, do not raise your voices, do not say a word until the day I tell you to shout. Then shout!" So he had the ark of the Lord carried around the city, circling it once. Then the army turned to camp and spent the night there. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. And the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the 2nd day they marched around the city once, and then returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. 15. On the 7th day they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times. In the same manner, except on that day they circled the city 7 times. On the day they circled the city 7 times, the 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that are in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies when we sent. But keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it." Verse 19. All the silver and the gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. Verse 20. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted in the sound of the trumpet. At the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women and young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Verse 22. Joshua said to the 2 men who had spied out the land, "Go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong with her, in accordance to with your oath to her." So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and mother, her brothers and sisters, and all who belonged to her. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. Verse 24. Then they turned the whole city and of everything in it. Then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute and her family and all who belonged to her, because she had hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. Verse 26. At that time Joshua pronounced this solemn oath: "Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son he will lay its foundations. At the cost of his youngest he will set up its gates." So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. All right. Joshua's a good book. It's really well written. I'm tired today, guys. Alrighty. That's all I got. I love you. Thank you. Amen.